Yeah, and that's a practice. Practice to say something. It's to call it something, because it's not a practice in the sense of it doesn't require repetition. It's the practice. By practice, I mean what to explore or focus on. And it has to do with understanding more deeply, understanding in the sense not intellectually of seeing more deeply. So seeing that if you have a good meditation and you stare at a tree, there's something there that you're enjoying that is also present when you're cooking. It's also present when you're working. But you don't recognize it. You're not seeing what is in front of your face, so to speak. Just to take it further, it's also there when you're hungry and cold. Your examples of the thing that could be difficult to be with, or you're talking about a state. You said the state of being expanded. But when you realize something of what's enjoyable there is not a state. So the state of being looking at a tree, whatever it is, the state that you get into, and the state of working, the state of cooking, there's something there, the root of what's beautiful, free, and enjoyable, the expansiveness, is there in all cases. It's the confusion around what is that expansiveness. It's more subtle than that. It's more subtle than that because it's trickier. It's a deeper illusion. It's a deeper, like an optical illusion. That's what we're talking about. It's deeper. It's deeper because it's more subtle and tricky. And in a sense, when you see it, it's more obvious. And it has to do with the expansion you're describing is like, let's say what I really want is water. But if I get close to it and touch it with my hand, I'm thirsty, but I touch it with my hand and maybe like lick my fingers, it's like, oh, I'm there, I got it. And it feels like, oh my God, it's amazing. I was so thirsty, it was so uncomfortable, and now I have the water. And then you're barely even satiating yourself. And you go back into thirst. You haven't really drank the glass of water because you actually you didn't really get it. And so when you meditate and you get into an expanded state, you're tasting, it's like a glimpse of something, but you're not getting the real thing. You're approximating. But it's creating a sense of like, oh, I am touching something that is what I want, and I can taste it, and it's great. And then I lose it, and then I get it, and then I lose it, and then I get it. And all I have to do is kind of repeat this till I get closer. That isn't what works. What works is to see that which I'm getting close to is always here. So in the metaphor, I always have had the water ready to drink. But you would think like, well, why do I not notice it? Because this sense of contraction, expansion. So I'm contracted, I expand it feels great. I contract, uncomfortable, I expand, it feels great. This is what we do all the time. And that's kind of the addiction. But this enables us to be a thing, to be someone. Someone who's doing something in time, trying to get somewhere, trying to get away from something. So it enables a form of living that's identified. That's what we talk about as identified. Because it's something that expands and contracts, and I'm the one expanding and contracting. And I am not that which is not expanding and contracting. But if you do this, there's the expansion, the contraction. You can say, yeah, it's me, but it's actually just my hand. I'm not my hand, because I'm aware of my hand. There's something that's aware of the expansion and the contraction. That which is aware of it is not expanding and contracting. So when you go into a state, your body-mind, let's say, your mind relaxes, expands. That's great. It's important because, as I was saying, it helps us approximate. If we live like this, and we relax the hand just like a tiny little bit, and then we contract a tiny little bit, we never will taste that expansiveness. Reminds us of there's something that's really possible. Exactly. It's not the full knowing of that possibility. It's just a taste, it's just a glimpse. And then we can get addicted to the glimpse. And so that's why I was saying there's an expansiveness that is there even when you're cooking, when you're working, even when you're feeling contracted, even when you're feeling in a difficult state. And that's the true freedom. That's the ultimate freedom, let's say it. And that's what I refer to as it's here now. It's always here. This statement is always true. To see through the illusion instead of trying to create the state of it. Try to see through the illusion of it not being here. But it has to do something, what's the obstacle has to do with the sense of self. Because you can't have it both ways. You can't know what I'm talking about and still believe you're something you're not. It's one or the other. And so in the state of illusion, you can go through the exploration of expanding, contracting. But to know what I'm talking about, what has to go is the knowing of what you are. The knowing in the sense of the belief that you're something that you're not. So this is where language, have to be careful. By knowing when I say, oh, I know what I am this. I am Nicholas. That's the belief in being something that I'm not. And so if you look at your experience, when you say I, what it refers to, what is it pointing to? And that's what I was saying, you can't have it both ways. You can know the freedom of that which is always expanded, let's say. But there, you cannot know what you are. Now, if you have a belief about what you are, that by definition is a contraction. You are now something rather than everything. And that experience of believing you're something can only happen in the confusion that happens when we see it, we experience the thought and not recognize it as a thought. It's a lot, yeah. That's the kind of the foundation of the whole house of cards. It's instead of I am, it's I am followed by something. And that something is the foundation of what we build, which is the illusion built in the thought world, made of thought, that appears to be something other than thought. Yeah, the eye points to it refers to something real. But when you say the sense of self, we have to be clear, there is something that when you say I, you're referring to that is real. Now, what it is the problem. And it's not. Yes. So, what was I saying about 20 minutes ago? That if you see thought as thought, you will feel something that you don't want to feel. Therefore, you buy into thought. You just described it. What did you describe? What am I referring to? No, but you described something that maps into what I was talking about. I'm being vague on purpose because I want to see, well, I don't want to spell it out. I described 20 minutes ago, generally speaking, this is what happens. You go into thought and believe it. The pull to that is not like, the mind is some evil thing and I'm prey to this thing. You buy into it. You choose into it. You are free. You're freedom itself. choosing that. Why? Because you don't want to feel something. And the answer isn't think about what it is you don't want to feel. Experiment what it is and see what you feel. So go into the feeling. Now you just described this. What is that?
You mean what feeling?
Yeah, what feeling? What's the feeling that you started to experience that then you described in metaphors? Well, no, that you just named it. It's fear. You say, I'm not gonna be able to feed myself, I'm not gonna be able to function. That, all of that is one thing only. All of that is thoughts with a feeling powering them. The feeling is fear. How do you know you're not going to feed yourself? You don't know. You're afraid you might not be able to. All it is fear. Well, now the challenge is, are you willing to go towards that fear? Because it works like this. I don't want to feel the fear. Therefore, I'm going to buy into the narrative of fear, which is, don't go there because then you're going to be afraid. Things are going to go not right. Just don't go there. And you're like, I'm a noble human doing the right thing, which is think. But it's actually avoiding fear, giving you a sense of being in control. In a sense, you have to be willing to take the risk. It's a risk, it's not going into the reality of. You have to be willing to take the risk of being dysfunctional, not being able to feed yourself, not being able to work, not being able to be responsible. You have to be willing to take the risk. But it's not, this is where it's important to discern. It's not, I'm just going to not be responsible so that I face this. No, I'm saying go towards what we've been talking about, which is look at the reality of thought and see thought only as thought. See, because we were going down this rabbit hole, and the more you look, the more you get close to this sense, if I go there, I'm not going to be able to function. So the more I go there, the more I get anxious and afraid. Which does not mean I will become dysfunctional. It just means I'm afraid I will become dysfunctional. That's a thought, but then there's also a sensation, which is the anxiety and the fear. And so now, as I was saying, all of the thoughts have to be seen to be thought and not anything other than thought. The same is with emotions. You have to see an emotion as an emotion, not as a reality or a truth. Just to see this is fear, this is pain, this is sadness, this is shame, and it is what it is. It's a sensation. You can name it, but you need to know it in the relationship to it, the taste of it, and to know that it is just a sensation. It's not the reality. So the sensation, afraid, which then the mind says it's afraid of not functioning, which creates the image of tomorrow me not functioning, you can know it as just a sensation. It's not the reality of me not functioning tomorrow and everything going to shit. It's just a sensation that is arising. There's a thing here where it's also not about now I have to like bring up this sensation and be in it, and it's just about noticing it, what it is, and directly relating with it, which is feeling it. But we don't get past it by provoking it, and because that's another addictive process of like invoking sensations, emotions, and then having a narrative around the more I invoke this, the more I'll be able to be free from it and transcend it. And it's about seeing it, being with whatever is, not creating it intentionally, because that's the same as going into thinking, going into emoting. It's just like thought. You see it for what it is. Here's an emotion of, and it's just a sensation. And you can start to see actually sensations, emotions, and thoughts. They're all one thing, a little loop. And it's in a sense, the imagination through images and sensations of something other than the perception of sight, sound, and sensation. And the seeing of this, the seeing through thought, the seeing through the emotional space, seeing it as it is. By seeing through, I mean you are not veiled with the illusion of what it's presenting. So the thought of tomorrow I don't function doesn't fool you to believe tomorrow you don't function. It's just I have the thought tomorrow I'm not going to function. There's a fear that is a kind of, it's the same thing at the sensation level. The fear tomorrow I will not function. It doesn't mean tomorrow I will not function. I have a fear tomorrow I will not. What is happening right now? Sounds, sights, sensations, thoughts, tomorrow I won't function. Emotions, tomorrow I won't function. And then something looks at that and evaluates what is the reality or the odds tomorrow I won't function. Yeah, because you're not avoiding the emotion. Because ultimately we avoid the emotion, so we obey whatever the emotion dictates. The emotion, I will not function tomorrow, dictates. Fear says, do what I say and you'll stop feeling me. And since you don't want to feel fear, it's like, perfect, what's the plan? Don't look at this. If you look at this, you feel fear. And fear is saying, hey, just listen to me and you stop feeling me. And you're like, cool, what's the plan? Don't look at this. Okay, not looking. Thank you very much. What I'm proposing is like the complete opposite. And then what I was describing earlier as wisdom can come from seeing thought as thought, emotion as thought world emotion, because I would define thoughts as imagined sounds, imagined images, and imagined sensations. The imagined sensations is what we call emotions. And there's an overlap with the actual sensation. So this is why it's really tricky, because the body, through chemistry, through electrochemical movements, produces physical sensations. The heart can race. There's a lot that happens with the body that makes it all feel more real. So if I'm afraid of a snake and I imagine a snake and my heart starts racing, then the reality of the imagination of the snake becomes even more real, and it's very hard to see through all of that. And so 99% of the things we're running away from are imagined. We're running away from this moment, always, because we imagine in this moment there's a horrible snake that I cannot be with. And then the mind is going to say, well, but there are snakes sometimes. Yeah, but not really. It's very rare. The amount of distress with it we're in. And this is that is something that you can take it as an experiment in trusting, giving it the benefit of the doubt. That you're actually running away from feelings, emotions. And when you get through emotions, we haven't got there, you're going to get to feelings. And that's something else. And that's where you kind of move from the minor leagues to the major leagues. And feelings have a much more raw, real, energetic power. But it's the same process. You learn to be with them. And it's all just energetics. It's all sensations. It's all movement. But all of this requires us to be able to touch whatever is coming up. And there's going to be at the core, there's going to be an energetic that is feeding the feelings, that feed the emotions, that feed the thoughts. And at that core, the energetic is what I've described a million times as fear and pain. But it's the kind of essential fear and pain. And there is all of the ramifications of it. But once you get to the essential, it's a pain and a fear about the same thing, and it's the ending of me. And again, as you get close to it, it feels like you are coming to the end of me. It feels like. And what actually is happening is the ending of the what I believe that I was, what I believe that I am. So the ending of the illusion. And I often say this, we don't always want that. So it's important to know a big part of myself doesn't want this. As I'm wanting it and working towards it, a part of me does not. I'm avoiding and running away. And you might come to a point where you start to see these two energetics, the wanting of that freedom and the avoiding of that freedom. It's like what we want the most is what we're most afraid of.